There is a specific kind of cold that has nothing to do with the weather. It's the feeling you get when you realize the person sitting across from you at dinner isn't looking at your face, but at the pulse beating in your neck. I'm typing this from a motel room 3 hours outside of Toronto. The door is dead-bolted, and I've shoved the heavy oak dresser against it, but I know it's just an illusion of safety. If it wants to get in, a piece of wood won't stop it. I just need to put this somewhere before I lose my mind completely. It started 5 years ago in Malaysia. I was 31, a mid-level logistics manager for a shipping firm. The company flew me out to Kuala Lumpur for a 3-week corporate audit. It was supposed to be a standard, boring assignment, but everything changed the moment I met our local liaison and translator, Maya. She was 26, sharp, and possessed a quiet, magnetic intensity. I was the only guy in our corporate group who wasn't a total suit, so we fell into an easy rhythm. By the time my flight back to Canada boarded, I was entirely consumed by her. 6 months later, we were married in her home village. My elderly father was the only person from my side to make the trip. We moved into a townhome in Toronto. I couldn't leave my career. I had spent a decade crawling up the corporate ladder, and Maya understood that the financial opportunities were better in Canada. But she missed the warmth of her family, the food, the vibrant noise of her hometown. I promised her we'd go back every winter. But promises are cheap when you're trying to impress a senior VP. Between the mortgage, our intense daily schedules, and a massive supply chain expansion our company was launching in Vancouver, I was working 80-hour weeks. In 5 years, we only made it back to Malaysia once. Maya never screamed or threw tantrums about it. She just grew quieter, disappearing into the background of our own home like a piece of furniture. By November of last year, the Vancouver project demanded my physical presence every single weekend. I finally sat Maya down in the kitchen and told her the winter trip wasn't happening. She didn't cry. She just stared at her teacup, her face completely expressionless. That silence was worse than a shouting match. For the next week, she was a ghost in the house. She cooked, she cleaned, but her eyes walked right through me. Guilt finally eroded my stubbornness. I decided I needed to fix things, even if it was just a small gesture. On a freezing Friday night in December, I took her to a highly rated, authentic Malaysian restaurant tucked into a sketchy alley downtown. I told her to order everything. I wanted to show her I was trying. She ordered dishes I couldn't pronounce, deep crimson curries heavy with lemongrass and ghost peppers. I ate every single bite she recommended, smiling through the sweat, ignoring the violent twisting that was already starting in my lower stomach. The drive home was a nightmare. By the time I unlocked our front door, my gut was screaming. I practically kicked my boots off in the entryway, threw my keys onto the console table, and ran straight for the master bathroom, unbuckling my belt on the sprint. Maya watched me from the hallway, her expression a mix of profound disgust and cold pity. "You brought this on yourself," she called out as the bathroom door slammed shut. I didn't answer. I collapsed onto the toilet, gripping the sink basin, sweating through my dress shirt. It felt like liquid fire was tearing through my intestines. "David," her voice came through the wood a few minutes later, flat and rhythmic. "Are you going to die in there?" "Give me 10 minutes, I groaned, my eyes watering. I heard her heavy winter boots pacing the hardwood floor outside. Maya was a proud woman. When she was furious, she isolated herself. I knew our romantic evening was dead, buried under the weight of my own stomach. Then, a sudden, sharp slam echoed from the living room. "Damn it!" Maya yelled. She never swore. It was so uncharacteristic that it made my pulse spike despite my physical agony. "What happened?" I shouted through the door. "I left my bag in the trunk," she answered, her voice dropping back into that dull, flat cadence. "My sister is supposed to text me about her medical results tonight." I remembered then. Her younger sister, Farah, was undergoing biopsy tests back home. Maya had been waiting on pins and needles for days. "I'll go down in a minute," I panted, trying to stabilize my breathing. "Just let me finish." "Don't bother," she snapped coldly. "You're useless right now." I heard the distinct jingle of the house keys being snatched off the console table. A second later, the heavy front door clicked open, then thudded shut. I sat there in the dark bathroom, shivering from the feverish chill in my stomach, feeling like the worst husband on earth. Going down to the subterranean parking garage of our building and coming back up usually took at least 4 or 5 minutes, assuming the elevator was waiting. I knew the timing perfectly because I had just made that exact sprint up to the 3rd floor myself. But less than 60 seconds later, the front door clicked open again. I blinked, staring at the bathroom wall. The heavy, unmistakable stomp of winter boots resonated through the entryway. It was too fast. Way too fast. "Maya," I called out, leaning toward the door. "Did you forget the clicker?" The footsteps didn't stop to answer. They accelerated, moving with a strange, heavy asymmetry. Thud drag straight into the master bedroom next door. Then, the bedroom door slammed shut with enough force to rattle the medicine cabinet above my sink. "Great," I muttered to myself. "She's furious." I spent another 10 miserable minutes pulling myself together. My legs were completely numb by the time I finally stood up, washed my face with freezing water, and stepped out into the hallway. The first thing I noticed was the front door. It was standing wide open. The fluorescent light from the building's corridor cut a stark, yellow rectangle across our dark living room rug. A freezing draft was blowing in, carrying the scent of wet asphalt and old exhaust. "Maya," I called out, walking over to the threshold. I looked left, then right down the long, empty concrete hallway. Nobody was there. The elevator doors at the end of the hall were shut tight. A sudden, bizarre sensation crept over my skin. The cold draft from the hallway didn't feel like winter air anymore, it felt heavy, almost suffocatingly warm, smelling faintly of jasmine and damp earth, the exact scent of the jungle behind Maya's childhood village. It felt like a physical weight pressing against my chest. I shuddered, pulled the heavy apartment door shut, and locked it. I went into the kitchen, downed 2 massive glasses of tap water, and tried to muster the courage to face my wife. The master bedroom door was tightly closed. I stood outside it, my knuckles hovering over the dark wood. "Hey," I said softly, knocking twice. "Look, I'm really sorry about the restaurant. And the trip. I know I've been drowning in work, but I promise I'm going to talk to HR on Monday. Let me in." Silence. Absolute, dead silence from the other side. "Maya, come on, don't do this. Is Farah okay?" Nothing. The handle didn't move. I twisted it, but the lock was engaged. A wave of irritation flared through my guilt. She had never locked me out before. It felt childish, completely out of character for her. "Fine," I muttered, walking away. "Have it your way." I went to the guest bedroom down the hall, took a long, boiling hot shower in the secondary bathroom, and changed into a pair of sweatpants. By the time I checked the clock on my phone, nearly 45 minutes had passed since we had walked through the front door. It was almost midnight. I walked back to the master bedroom. The house felt unnaturally cold now, the air conditioning vents humming a low, vibrating note that made my ears ring. "Maya," I said, hitting the door with the palm of my hand. "This is ridiculous. Open the door, or I'm sleeping on the couch, and we aren't talking about this tomorrow." No sound from inside. No shifting of blankets. No sighing. A heavy, oily dread began to settle into the bottom of my stomach. It wasn't the curry anymore. It was an instinctual panic. Even if she was asleep, my pounding would have woken her. "Maya!" I shouted, rattling the knob violently. "Answer me. Are you hurt? Did you pass out?" The emptiness that swallowed my voice was terrifying. My mind immediately jumped to a worst-case scenario: an aneurysm, a stroke, a carbon monoxide leak. I backed up against the opposite wall, braced my shoulder, and threw my entire weight against the doorframe. The wood groaned, but the lock held. On the third hit, a sharp, white-hot pain flared through my collarbone. I ran into the kitchen, tore open the drawer beneath the sink, and grabbed a heavy flathead screwdriver and a mallet. I wasn't thinking about the security deposit. I jammed the metal into the door seam right above the latch and smashed the mallet down. The wood splintered with a sound like a pistol shot. The latch popped. The door swung open an inch. I panted, dropping the tools onto the hardwood. The bedroom was entirely dark. The heavy blackout curtains were drawn so tightly that not even the ambient light from the city streets could penetrate the room. But as the door opened wider, a suffocating wave of heat rolled out into the hallway. The room smelled like a swamp: stagnant water, rotting leaves, and copper. I reached around the doorframe, fumbling for the light switch. I flipped it. Nothing happened. I looked up into the gloom. The overhead light fixture wasn't just burned out, it was gone. The copper wires hung down from a jagged hole in the plaster like torn nerves. Below it on the floor, the GLA